So you did everything right. You got the job, you worked harder, you stayed later when required, you maybe sent the odd email over the weekend, and you carried all that responsibility without any complaint. You maybe even hit the target that you were aiming for, and maybe you got the job and you got the raise that came with it. And even after a week or so of having attained all these goals you'd set out for, nothing in your internal life or even in your external life has really changed. You would say that the treadmill just seems to be running faster, expectations have got higher, and if you're honest, you might even be feeling a little more demoralized. And you ask yourself, was it really supposed to feel this empty? And the cosmic pat on the back and the confirmation that you counted for something never actually came. Work hard, be competent, be dependable, and the social contract almost will pay back. That's what we were told. Sadly, that's not the case. But here's where I'm going to get controversial, because I want to look at this through the other end of the telescope. What if we are asking the wrong question? Okay, let's zoom out for a second. Most modern work, especially corporate work, will run on systems. So you've got your processes, your performance reviews, your workflow tools, compliance frameworks, all those reporting lines. Now, none of this is actually necessarily wrong. Systems are useful and they keep complex organizations from collapsing into chaos and everything having to be renegotiated each time that we want to do something. But a system has a purpose, which is to produce consistent results. What, however, it is not designed to do is to give meaning to the people inside it, no matter how hard the HR department tries to convince us otherwise with all their various fun activities every couple of months. The system can measure you, it can optimize you, and indeed it can even replace you. But what it cannot do is it cannot know you, it cannot love you, and it cannot tell you who you are. And yet, if we're honest, I think many of us are quietly trying to extract meaning from this machine. We want our job to validate us, to confirm to us that we matter, to tell us that we're significant. And given how much of our lives that we pour into the day-to-day and work week, that's not necessarily a crazy instinct. And I think guys, and men in particular, are vulnerable to this. We are more likely than women, I would say as well, to link task and identity very, very tightly. But we have to remember, we are not our job. Let's make this a little less abstract. I know a lady and she runs a small gift box business. An order comes in and she has all the materials sitting on the shelves behind her. She assembles the box, the gift box, she packages it, and then she sends it out. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. It's all tangible. You can see the things that are completed. Now, I'm sure there's much more goes on in the background in support of that, sure. But the point still stands. Now, if we want to compare that type of a job to the more corporate environments that many of us, and maybe some of you who are watching, work in, we'll see there's a difference. If I look at my life, I can see that I'm juggling 20 live projects with almost like an infinite scroll to-do list. There's email threads that never close. There's meetings about meetings. And then I've got spreadsheets that are tracking numbers that represent things that I can neither see nor touch. The work itself is real. And if we're not diligent and we don't do it right, something's going to break downstream. And it's always very, very hard to put that back together again. But the experience is really abstract. And it all feels like it's happening, for me, certainly inside my head, rather than in physical time and space. So if you kind of work in the corporate environment, you're rarely going to see something finished from start to end. You're rarely going to feel the weight or the heft of the completed object in your hands. And over time, I think that does something to you. And it's not physical exhaustion that our grandfathers would have felt. I think it's more like a slow demoralization that leads to a loss of meaning. And you may find yourself wondering, quietly, what am I actually building here of any worth? And then I think there's another layer to this that we don't often name in working life. And I think part of what I would say we are getting at when we say we want meaning at work is that actually what we want is human connection. We want to feel known by other people who we spend most of our waking hours alongside. But the modern workplace, sadly, is not designed for that either. It's designed for professionalism, for guarded speech, managed impressions, and you are expected to be competent. You're always allowed to be polite, but you're not always allowed to fully be yourself, are you? So conversations that we'll have will kind of hover at a safe altitude. We'll not talk about politics or things that maybe matter personally to us. We perform versions of ourselves that fit the culture of the organization. And over time, I think that creates a quiet loneliness, particularly in men. You could work at an organization for 20 years, and if you left tomorrow, you might be lucky to get a few text messages over the following weeks. And after a year, I'd say those text messages will dry up. And for me, I think meaning partly depends on being known. So it's no surprise that work can feel thin, especially when we are present, but we are never truly seen. Then I think there's also something else insidious that has crept into the modern workplace. No longer is it enough to work responsibly. We must be passionate. We must talk with purpose, energy, excitement, as though we are personally reshaping civilization. If you're doing your job right, you'll be driving a paradigm shift in value delivery, or maybe even you will be delivering scalable frameworks for sustainable excellence. Yeah, good luck with that. But here's the thing. Historically, work was just a means to an end. It provided an income, a structure, a contribution, stability. It was dignified, but it wasn't always about identity. And somewhere along the way, I think we've absorbed this idea that our job must be our calling, our passion, our deepest self-expression. And I think that is an enormous burden to place on any organization, whether it's a small family business or a faceless corporate machine. And when it doesn't deliver transcendence, I think we assume that there's something wrong with us, especially when everyone else seems intoxicated by the incense of the corporate purpose. We wonder, are we ungrateful? Maybe we're lazy. Maybe we're broken. And we start to reflect about this and absorb this into ourselves. And we go home disappointed because we expected a system which is built for productivity to somehow provide salvation. And I know that's theological language, but I think that we maybe expected to feel better about ourselves and our lot when we got the job, or we got the role, or we got the raise, or we got the title. But you feel nothing. Nada. And I think we need to take time to remind ourselves that the workplace is actually designed to extract value through compliance and not deliver meaning to the compliant. So let us connect this to something deeper. Good men, they burn out. That's the dependable ones like you and me. And over time, many of them quietly turn themselves into utilities. That is, functional men who just do things. And when you become solely a utility, people start to appreciate your function. They rely on your output. And in fact, they may even respect your reliability so much that they actually give you more to do. But they do not see the man. But if you then look to the organization to give you identity in return, you're eventually going to feel hollow, because corporations are engines. They are not cathedrals. They exist purely to produce value. They are not designed to answer the ultimate questions of your life, however much you want that to be the case. I think it's interesting then as well, if we look at this from a Christian perspective, there's actually a lot of sense in this, because work existed before the fall. Human beings were placed in the garden to work it and to keep it, and labour itself was not the curse. Futility was actually the curse. Work is good, it is dignified, it is part of our created design, but it was never meant to be salvific. It was never meant to give us salvation. And I think as humans, we have got this all mixed up in the wrong way around over the millennia. So if you expect your job to give you identity, every restructure becomes existential. Every annual appraisal feels like a judgment on your worth. I say that as someone who feels that pressure myself. But if work is provision, honourable provision, it takes its proper place. It feeds your family, it stabilises your household, it funds your responsibilities, but it does not define your worth before your creator. Meaning is not manufactured by systems. It emerges through responsibilities that you choose, through sacrifice, through obedience, through love. And those things, while they can happen at work, it's not guaranteed to happen there. So how then shall we live? Well, you don't need to quit your job tomorrow, but you do need to stop demanding from your employer what only vocation can give. If your work feels abstract, build something concrete alongside it. Something with edges. Something that begins and ends. Something where effort leads to visible fruit. Train your body. teach someone something, write, build something in your garage, lead your church or community, start something small and real, ideally with like-minded people. And when you build something that you choose, you'll find your energy returns. Be a creator, not a constant consumer. Get it in balance. As we look at this, overall, we have confused categories. Work can give income, structure, skill, opportunity, but it cannot give ultimate meaning. If you stop demanding that your work does, something inside you will start to relax. You can work diligently and locate your deeper meaning where it actually belongs, in who you are before your creator, in the responsibilities that you freely embrace, in the things that you build that no performance review can ever measure. Just like what I'm doing here on YouTube, this space is mine and mine alone, and I'm working to try and build something, and I'm enjoying it, and it's actually been one of the most stimulating things that I have done in a long number of years. So remember, a system can optimize you, but it can never redeem you. And once you understand that, the emptiness will stop being a surprise to you, and you can begin building something fuller alongside it, something that belongs solely to you. And if you are lucky and you get a fair wind, it might even last many years beyond you. So if you enjoy what we're doing here, give me a thumbs up, maybe even give me a subscription. But what I would value most is your thoughts in the comments. Does this resonate with you? Do you find that you are linked with task and identity, and your work becomes you and you become your work, and it's just hard to distinguish where you separate in between? Let me know, give me your thoughts, and we'll riff some more on this another day. Catch you in the next one.